Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni muli wanji, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the crowded Mattress Studios in the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville, in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so honored and so delighted that you join us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to tell all of your family and friends about the show. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you find your podcasts. Our guest today is Elise Parsley. She is here to celebrate It's Tummy Time! Before we invite Elise into the studio, I want to ask all the authors and aspiring authors that are listening to the show this question. Are you looking for a fun way to get the world to celebrate your book? Do you know that there are literally thousands of books published every single month? It is so difficult for a book to get through that crowd of books that are published every single month and to get the attention of parents and teachers and grandparents and other book lovers. Well, we have something that could help you a whole lot. It's called the Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read Program. If our panel believes that your book is worthy of 4 or 5 out of 5 stars, it becomes a certified great read. And with that status comes a number of really powerful tools that can let thousands of people know that your book is worthy of their attention. To learn more, please go to our website, readingwithyourkids.com, and click on the Authors Click Here button at the top of the page. Join us right now from the beautiful state of South Dakota. Our guest is here today to celebrate her great new board book. It's called It's Tummy Time. Please welcome to the show, Elise Parsley. Hey, Elise, how are you?
I'm so good. Thank you so much for having me on today.
I'm delighted to have you on. We've had so much fun chatting before we started recording. Elise was telling me she lives in this house. It's over 100 years old, and she has 4 kids with number 5 on the way, and they're all under 7 years old. How did you have time to write a board book?
Well, I will tell you, most of my books were written and made before these people came on the scene, and it has gotten slower and slower ever since. This one was not, I think the reason I was able to write it was because I was living it every single day. And so it came more naturally than any other book I've made. And there's, I don't know how many words in it, maybe 40 some words. There's not that many words. But it was a fun book to make because, yes, it's part of my everyday life, it seems. So someone's always doing tummy time, it seems.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit what tummy time means in your home.
Sure. So tummy time it's kind of it's a little bit of a modern phenomenon. People often didn't need to do tummy time before because before babies slept on their tummy and spent more time on their tummy in general. And now because of SIDS and other things, pediatricians are recommending that babies go to sleep on their back, right? And any new parent knows this now, that back is best, and you put your baby down on their back. And because of that, babies don't spend as much time on their tummy, and they need that for so many different reasons. They need that time to build muscles and to they just develop so many different things cognitively and physically. So tummy time is something also that really freaks a lot of parents out, right? And a lot of babies don't love it. And at our home, we do try to make tummy time fun because it is important to do. So we spend a lot of time, reading to our kids while they're on their tummy. We're always propping up a book in front of them, even, or several books around in a semicircle around them. So no matter where they look, they're getting something. And of course you can put toys in front of them. You can just lay down with them and look at them and talk to them. And it doesn't have to be complicated. Babies are not complicated. They're easy to please if really what they want is attention.
Yep.
And tummy time is a great time to give your baby attention. You can even put your baby right on your tummy and lay on your back. They're having tummy time on you. They love that.
Yeah.
So,
I'm glad that you mentioned that, because that was my favorite time with my kids, is when they would start to get tired or cranky or whatever. I pick them up, and evidently there's a space right underneath my chin here that, and it's not just my two kids. It seems that it's like just like a universal baby fit. Baby's just like right up there, and they immediately chill out, and either I'm holding them there or I'm lying down with them there, and it is, and literally when my kids were younger, well, they're a lot older now, but they spent a lot of time sleeping on their tummy, on top of my chest, underneath my chin, and it was just the best. And in fact, a lot was done right here on this bed where I'm broadcasting from.
See, right? It's not just good for the baby, it's good for the parent. Really, it gets those feel-good hormones going. It is all around. It's a win-win, I think. So.
You mentioned hormones, and I'm not a chemistry, sciencey kind of guy, but there is, and you can certainly speak to this better than I, because you're closer to it, but there's something, I was going to say magical, but it's science. When we have kids, when we have babies, we're different. A lot of us become big piles of mush, just like all of a sudden, you were a loud guy the other day. Now you're just this big pile of mush that it wants to be in love with everybody.
It's true. It's true. There's something about babies. They soften everyone up, I think. I mean, hopefully they do. If they don't, you maybe need to get some help. But the general population, they love babies. And really, I'm amazed, even with this Tummy Time book, I think a lot of people think this is a book for babies who are young enough to be doing tummy time, which is anywhere from, freshly born to, 9 months, 10 months, 11. But really, I find that kids who are just beyond that, into elementary school, and even some middle school kids, they love babies, and they love talking to babies and helping babies with tummy time. They're big softies about babies too. And so I find that those have been often the kids who have enjoyed this book just as much, if not more, than the target audience, if you will. Because kids love babies. Yeah. And, so I think I love that. I love hearing that. I didn't necessarily write it with that in mind, but I love that is the result.
Well, without, and please understand, I don't mean any disrespect by this at all, but when you're writing a board book for kids, hopefully the baby loves the book, but the reality is they're not really, the little 6-month-old or 6-week-old isn't necessarily connecting all the beautiful words that you've strung together. They're loving the fact that there's this human being that is so much stronger than them, and they feel so much safer around, is reading to them. And so they're loving that situation. And I think so writing a board book is even harder, because you have to your 45 words has to entertain somebody that the book wasn't really written for. It has to entertain the adult. It has to entertain the older sibling, and get them to want to read this book over and over and over again with the child that is most likely going to want to eat the book as opposed to listen to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Picture books have a unique audience, right? Because it's not just for children, it's for children and the adult reading to the child. You have to make sure that both of those people are considered when you're making a picture book. And I love that. I think that's one of my favorite parts about making picture books, is that I have this dual audience. And then board books, there's almost a third, audience, because babies experience the world in a different way than a child does, and in a very different way than an adult does. But I think, oh my goodness, like you were saying, what they love is that they're safe in the arms of an adult having this quality time. And that's one of the most important things about reading with a child, is that you are building a crucial connection, that you're building safety, you're building their core memories, and you're helping them understand that this is a good world, this is a good place to be, these are people who love you. And if you can connect that to something as powerful as books, that's going to set them up for a terrific life. They're going to have a good mindset going into the rest of their lives. And I think too, if you include your toddler or your grade schooler in that, you're teaching that toddler and grade schooler that there are these other people in the world. There are these babies, and we can take care of them. We can love them. And this is something about the baby that we're going to talk about now. This is tummy time. I love that as my kids have gotten older and then these new babies have come along, they've become caretakers. When the oldest became a big sister, she could give a rip. She was 17 months old and whatever, but now that she is the big 6-year-old sister, she is ready for this new baby. She's going to help. She's going to do the things with this baby. I know they're going to be the best champions of tummy time around here because they've read about it. They've read about what babies like, and they're ready to participate in that. And so it makes kids also more empathetic. It makes them think about others in a new way. Kids who are more helpless than them, and to be kind and to be thoughtful of them. So all of that in a board book, right?
Well, you bring up something, and I just want to take this moment to advocate it. It was something that happened when I was growing up and going to public school. It's something that happens in a lot of private and religious and parochial schools now. It's not something that I see happening in public schools these days, where older kids become reading buddies with the younger kids. And for my kids' school, when they were growing up, when they were kindergartners and first graders, they became reading buddies with the middle school kids, the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. I know that I was somebody's reading buddy when I was in middle school, and we go down and read to kids. And it was, obviously, the younger kids loved getting to know the older kids, but the older kids got this sense of, I matter.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And that is something, if the only thing a kid comes out of a school with is the idea that I matter, then the school is a success. And I don't see that happening in public schools these days. And if you're in a school, if your kids are in a school, if you're a teacher and it's not happening in your school, I want to encourage you to try to bring up that Reading Buddies program. And it's just, it's a win-win for everybody involved.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Kids love that responsibility. They love it. My daughter, my oldest, is 6.5 and she's learning to read. And it's one thing to read to mom, but it's another thing to read to her 2 little brothers, and they love it. They love it. They're snuggled right up next to her, and she owns that. She is ready to go, and she's got these little, tiny paperback books with very simple stories, but she really enjoys it, and she'll read through a ton of them, because she has this audience. So I think, yep, absolutely. Connect those different age groups, and it's amazing what you're doing to help each of those age groups.
Yep. Absolutely. I just wanted to touch base a little bit. I was looking on your website, and I love to see all the different books that authors have put out in the past before the one that we're talking about. And I always like to see which one jumps out at me and hits me over the head. And I have to tell you that your book, If You Ever Want to Bring a Circus to the Library, Don't! Just jumped out at me. And being a professional clown, someone that's traveled around to libraries and bring all sorts of mischief and mayhem and magic to libraries. Can you just talk a little bit about that book?
Oh my goodness. Well, I love that you picked that book. I am always amazed so I have 4 different books in the Magnolia Says Don't series. That's the 3rd one, maybe the 4th one. I don't remember. But I'm always amazed at who likes that one the most versus one of the others. And that book was probably the hardest one to write. And I think is maybe partly the pressure of okay, this book is about libraries. People have big, strong feelings connected to libraries. And so I had to, make sure I was being respectful of the library, but also bringing the fun that Magnolia, my main character, always brings into every story. And so, it actually initially started off with being a magic show at a library. And then we, for various reasons, ended up shifting it over to a circus. And I think, granted, libraries have changed even since I was a kid, and they are they are more, maybe a little more circusy than they were when I was younger, and I'm sure when you were younger. So it's not quite as shocking as it maybe would have been 50 years ago. But it was fun to see what kinds of rules do libraries still have, and then how could we maybe bend those rules or outright break them. So it was a good challenge to see how Magnolia could bring in a circus and just cause all sorts of mayhem, from walking a tightrope across the bookshelves to exploding out of a cannon and knocking over the bookshelves. And oh my goodness, can you imagine? I think that would be the worst thing that could happen at a library, would be to
knocking over the bookshelf. Yes,
the entire catalog. So,
yeah.
But it was fun to do, and that series was fun. That was how my career started, was with the first Magnolia Says Don't book. And then I was so grateful to be able to make a whole series from it. And you are the competition too. When I go to libraries in the summer, I get there and the kids are like, did you see so-and-so, the clown? Or there's a guy in our area who does balloon animals. I will never be as cool as him. And I'm sure I'd never be as cool as a clown who comes to the library, but.
Well, I have to tell you, you brought back a memory. It had to have been over 30 years ago when I first was booked to go in perform in a library, and I am going in thinking, how in the world am I going to perform in a library? You got to be quiet in a library. You can't be getting the kids to count with you and jump up and down and all this other nonsense. And I was really surprised when the librarian just said to me, do your show. And I really own that. And I'm like, you mean I can make noise in a library? Like, yes. I'm like, oh. So, yeah. Kind of evil. Tell me, what is it that I was reading that, this idea of being a kid's author has kind of been something that's been part of your life for a while. What was it that made you want to write stories for kids?
Well, I should actually say probably the idea of being a kid's book illustrator has probably been my dream. I mean, far longer than being an author. I did not think that I never was the kind of kid who grew up thinking I will write books. I'm amazed when I meet kids who think that way. I think, oh gosh, if I had that mindset, think of how much further I could have gone. But I grew up enjoying stories. My family is noisy and loves to tell stories, and we love to tell especially funny stories and stories with maybe a little extra exaggeration. So that's been part of my life always. But my favorite has always been to draw pictures that tell a story and that make people laugh. And when I found out you could grow up and actually do that as a job, I was sold, and I thought, well, I better at least give it a try. And if it doesn't work, I will go a different direction, but we're going to go for this. So I went to school. Actually, my first official art classes were in college. I did not have those growing up, but I loved it in college. As soon as I started, I knew this was what I should be doing. And my teachers were so accommodating. They knew I wanted to do books. And so they encouraged me in that. And then as I was going along, I also ended up getting a minor in creative writing. Partly because I thought, well, it won't hurt. I'm sure going to use writing my whole life, no matter what I'm doing. And ended up falling in love with that. It was very unexpected to enjoy that so much. And then when I graduated, I thought, well, I better start making my portfolio. And I found that making a portfolio of images without a story to back it up was kind of hard. It was hard for me to imagine, what should I even draw? I don't have a story, So then I started writing stories so that I would have something to illustrate, and was extremely, surprised and very, very glad to find that other people enjoyed those stories too. They enjoyed my writing as much as my illustrating. So I had the opportunity to do both, but, was not expecting that. Was certainly going into it thinking I'll be just the illustrated by person on the title, but, was very grateful to do both.
Now, when I love asking author illustrators this question, for you, what comes first when you're writing a book? Like if you're thinking about taking a circus to the library, what comes first, the story or the illustrations?
it's been different. Each book has, I don't necessarily set out to do just the story first or just the illustration first. My first book, the Magnolia brings an alligator to a school. It's called If You Ever Want to Bring an Alligator to School, Don't. And that one started off as an illustration, actually, because for my portfolio, I knew I'd read over and over, you need to have illustrations with children. You need to have illustrations that involve places where children go. You need to involve animals in your portfolio, and then maybe, throw in some funny mischief and you'll have some good pieces. So that was kind of what I was going for. And I started with a drawing of a little girl in school with an alligator next to her, and then a teacher towering over them, glaring. And the teacher had a paper airplane in her hair. And the alligator is blaming Magnolia. So that was the illustration that sparked. I had that in my portfolio, and it made me laugh, and I thought, well, this is fun. But it was months later that I thought, I think I could write a story. I need to explain more of what happened. This is obviously not just the only thing that happened that day. If an alligator was in school, a lot more happened. So I set out to write that story. So that happened that way. But the circus story, the circus in the library story, happened the other way around. And for that one, by the time I wrote that, it was my third book. So I had a little bit of a formula I needed to follow. So I actually started with text there first. But every now and then, as I'm even working on the text, it helps me to have a couple of visuals to kind of to get me excited about the story and to make me laugh and to keep me going. So sometimes I will draw an illustration that goes with it. It's probably not going to end up in the book, but it kind of just gives me a little more fuel to keep going with the story, and can sometimes spark ideas. Just doodling and not having an agenda can give freedom to think of ideas that I maybe wasn't thinking of. So
I just thought of a very silly, inconsequential question, but it just popped into my head. So you're doing these illustrations that are probably not going to end up in the book. What happens to those? Because you're an awesome illustrator. I'm like, I'd love to have one of those. You just throw those things away?
Yeah, they're in a file somewhere. I don't know. They're around, and they aren't usually as fleshed out as maybe some of my other pictures, but it's, something to keep me going. And yeah, they're in a file somewhere. I don't know. buried somewhere deep in my computer's hard drive.
So you mentioned that, most of these books were written before you became a mom of 4 going on 5. Are you still able to find some time to write and to illustrate and to create new works?
I am slowly but surely, yes. I'm still trying to keep, of course, this is a season that's always changing. And so I think, I try to be really easy on myself. And I'm not one of those people who can, at the end of the day, sit down and work for 4 hours. I know there are illustrators out there who do that and authors, and I'm not one of those people. So, and that's good. I've found that out about myself, and, but I have a wonderful husband who makes it work for me to go write every Friday afternoon. And that is, what? I've also learned that once you become a mom, I'm sure lots of people know this. Once you become a parent, you find out what you can accomplish in a very short amount of time, because you do not have large chunks of free time anymore once you're a parent. So sometimes I look back and I think, how did I not write 50 books when I had 40-hour work weeks? That's amazing. But now I have these 3.5-hour work weeks, and I accomplish quite a lot in that short window of time. And I spend more time thinking throughout the week, which is just a different strategy than what I used before. It was more hands-on before, and now I spend more time contemplating in between those writing sessions. So I'm working on it, and working on a nonfiction book right now, and then would love to have a follow-up to Tummy Time. I was working on that not too long ago too, so we'll see if anything ever comes of that. But yeah, always trying to think of ideas. And I also tell myself, these people that I'm raising are my audience right now. So this is 24/7 research. I mean, they are giving me ideas every single day, and I am writing them down. So once I shuffle them off to college, just watch out, because I'm going to be.
Okay. Well, I just had an idea that came to me. It's probably not something you can use, but I thought, if you think about bringing an alligator to tummy time, don't. I don't know. Whatever.
Alligators are on their tummies a lot, though. They're probably, I mean, look at how powerful they've become because of all that tummy time. Right?
There you go. There you go. Hey, Elise, where can we go to find out more about you and to find out more about It's Tummy Time and all the other great books that you've created?
Sure. So my website is just eliseparsley.com, and Elise is E-L-I-S-E, and parsley spelled just like the plant. And then I'm on Instagram also as Elise Parsley, and my books are in all the bookstores where you buy books. So go ahead, and if they don't have one of my books, you be sure to ask them to order it in, and look really disappointed if they don't have it in already.
Absolutely.
Be sure to do that.
And then ask politely, because it always
Of
makes
course,
better
of
when
course.
you're polite. Yeah.
Yes.
We've had a great time speaking to the author and illustrator of It's Tummy Time, Elise Parsley. Hey, Elise, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much, Jed. I enjoyed it.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Really, really important interview that you don't want to miss. Our guest will be Valerie James Abbott. She is the author of Pat a Pillow. She's also a mom. And Pat a Pillow tells the true story of her family's experience dealing with early childhood hearing loss. She talks a little bit about some of the things that we should be aware of, some of the different interventions that are now available that weren't available for her child and her family. It's a fascinating conversation, lots of great information. You don't want to miss it. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, I want to start by thanking our guest, Elise Parsley. Please be sure to pick up her book, It's Tummy Time. Also want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Jordan Saley, Cassandra Mason-Nay, Stephanie Davila, Will Cheever. Want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, and as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.